Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got our college basketball best bets here for February 11th here for this Tuesday slate of college basketball. Setup's messed up. I'm in an Airbnb right now and I think the echo's horrible, but we're going to make do with it here. We've got a lot of games today in college basketball. We've got, of course, got our 5 best bets for today. Some big school basketball, the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten in a game in the Mountain West as well that we're going to get to later on in the video. Before we get into the picks, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Later today, we will have our NBA predictions as well in the channel. I believe there are 4 games in the National Basketball Association for today, but of course, right now here are our college basketball best bets. On top of those videos, make sure to go check out our UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Rodriguez predictions. That is linked in the description down below as well. All right, getting on to the first of our 5 best bets for today. We're going to start things off, and also I'll timestamp all the games today, obviously, since there are no graphics and I'm not in the normal setup right now. Tomorrow we'll be back to the normal looks, so I will have these games timestamped for today. We're starting things off with the game here in the Southeastern Conference between the Florida Gators and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. If you've been watching us here on the channel recently, I mean, we've been trying to pick against Mississippi State as much as possible. This is not that great of a basketball team. We've said it time in and time out. I mean, they're really dependent on Josh Hubbard, their sophomore guard. He was great last season to end off SEC play, and he's been all right this year, but it's really been the inconsistency out of Hubbard, which has kind of cost Mississippi State in some of their big games. Now, the Bulldogs are still ranked 22nd in the country, but they have now split their last 4 games with a win on the road against that horrible South Carolina Gamecocks team. They lose back-to-back games at home to Alabama and to Missouri, and they go on the road to Georgia. They win the game somehow by 1 point, and now they return home. But again, it's the Mississippi State Bulldogs are completely dependent on Josh Hubbard. You look at how he plays. I mean, when he is on and he's at his best, like he was in the Alabama loss, again, I get it's a loss, but losing to that Bama team by 4 points, there's no shame in that. And we are going to talk about more Alabama basketball later in the video. But Josh Hubbard, again, scores 38 points in that Bama game, obviously, and the Crimson Tide end up winning it. But when Hubbard's at his best, Mississippi State is not a bad basketball team. If Hubbard can get his shooting going, this guy is a real solid player from Mississippi State, obviously the leader of this team, because once you get past Josh Hubbard, you're looking and you're relying on scorers like Keyshawn Murphy, like Claudell Harris, Riley Kugel. You can't depend on those guys to score for Mississippi State. And I personally think they're going to have to play a perfect basketball game here to beat Florida. I really think so. Oddly enough, Mississippi State's been playing worse at home than they have been on the road this season in the SEC. Now, their last victory at home did come in that overtime victory over Sean Padula and the Ole Miss Rebels. Obviously, that overtime game where we've said it before. I mean, it felt like Mississippi State was trying to let Ole Miss back in that basketball game, and obviously, it was eventually won by Mississippi State in OT. But that's the last time they've won at home. That was January 18th. Since then, a loss at Rocky Top to Tennessee, a win against South Carolina, and then again those back-to-back losses to Bama and to Mizzou, and then a win on the road against Georgia. I don't think Mississippi State's all that great, and they're taking on a Florida team, which I get, this is a typical letdown spot, but hell, the letdown spot yesterday didn't really hurt us. I know yesterday wasn't the best day. It was a 2-3 spot, 2-3 day here on the channel. We got we got Florida A&M on the road yesterday, along with Clemson at home, covering and destroying North Carolina, kind of how we saw that basketball game going. And again, I get it, this could potentially be a letdown spot here for the Florida Gators, but we had a letdown spot yesterday with North Carolina and Clemson, and obviously the Tigers took care of business down there in South Carolina. So we expect Florida to do the same exact thing. I get it, Florida's not at home like Clemson was yesterday, but this is a team coming off of the biggest win I think any team has pulled off all season long. Florida going to Auburn, Alabama, and beating by far the best team in college basketball, obviously the Auburn Tigers. I mean, Walter Clayton with 19 points in that game was enough to push Florida over the top for a huge victory, beating again the #1 ranked team in the country, 90-81. Clayton, again, is a guy who's going to be averaging 18 points a game. You get Elijah Martin, Will Richard, Alex Condon. This is a good Florida team. Obviously, they, beat Tennessee and blew them out earlier in the season, and then again eventually played Tennessee again and ended up losing. But this is a good Florida squad. They're 7-3 in the SEC, with 2 of those losses being on the road to Tennessee and Kentucky, and the other one being kind of a confusing loss at home to the Missouri Tigers. But this is a good Florida squad, and they're playing with a bunch of momentum right now. Prior to the Auburn win, they won at home against the Vanderbilt Commodores as well. I think Florida's okay in this spot. I don't think Mississippi State really rises to the occasion. In other big spots they've played this year, they've lost. They've beat one ranked team in the SEC all year long, and sure, again, it is their rivalry game against Ole Miss, but home loss to Kentucky. I get Kentucky's, again, another ranked squad, but a home loss to Kentucky by 5. They go to Auburn and get blown out like we expected earlier in the season. They go to Knoxville and they get blown out by the Tennessee Volunteers. They lose to Alabama. They lose to Mizzou. They get Mizzou at home, and Missouri beats them 88-61. I'm not impressed with Mississippi State. Again, they are solely dependent on how Josh Hubbard plays, but even when Hubbard, again, drops 24 points against Missouri, they still lose the game 88-61. Hubbard's a great shooter, I'll give you that, but really, once you go beyond Josh Hubbard, and this is why, again, Hubbard has to be at his best for this team to win and beat a lot of ranked squads, there's not much else help beyond their star sophomore. I think the all-around better team is definitely the team on the road here. It is the Florida Gators. We take a look at the odds here. Florida is a 1.5 point favorite on the road. So again, essentially just a pick'em game here with, again, the odds shifting towards the Gators. And I'm perfectly fine with that. We're going to take the Florida Gators here on the road. I don't think the game being in Mississippi makes the biggest difference here because we haven't seen Mississippi, again, rise to the occasion essentially on the road this year. I get it. Second road game in a row for Florida after that win on the road against Auburn. I think they're fine. Again, we have seen them lose at Kentucky and at Tennessee this season, but we just saw them win at Auburn. I don't think going on the road in Mississippi State is going to be the hardest thing to do, especially when we think that, again, I don't think Mississippi State is the best team in the SEC. They're good, they're ranked, but when it comes to playing the other top teams in the conference, I don't think they're all that great. And Florida, again, is making a case at this point in the season to potentially be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. We'll see if they get that, but again, Florida with that win over Auburn, I mean, who knows where, again, the Gators are going to be placed. It's going to be Florida to win on the road and cover the 1.5 points here against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We move on to the Atlantic Coast Conference for a matchup between the Syracuse Orange and the Miami Hurricanes. Miami's horrible at basketball, right? There's no other way to put it. Miami's just bad this season. They are 1-11, 5-18 as a whole this season. I mean, this is the same team again earlier in the year that lost a game to the Charleston Southern Buccaneers. I mean, this Miami team is not good. They have one victory this year in the ACC. They got it on February 1st, about 10 days ago now, where they beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They win that game at home by 6 points. I'm serious, the way that Miami won that basketball game is the only way Miami's ever going to be able to win another game in the ACC. A low-scoring affair where they barely edge out their opponent. Pause. But still, Matthew Cleveland is by far their best guy. He averages 16 points a night, and Cleveland, again, in that victory over Notre Dame, scored 21. It was a good performance for him, but beyond that, for Miami, again, it's kind of the same thing we talk about with Hubbard and Mississippi State, but obviously, again, Hubbard's supporting cast is a lot more talented than Matthew Cleveland's supporting cast, and obviously, again, Josh Hubbard is a much better player than Matthew Cleveland is, but I mean, it's Lynn Kidd, Braden Johnson, Jaleel Bethea is a talented freshman point guard who I think is going to be a very good basketball player at some point in time, but obviously not this early in his career. It just, again, when we look at Miami, they don't play competitive basketball. They haven't played Syracuse yet this season, and we'll get to the Orange in a minute, but I'm very surprised that this Miami team that has won one game all year long in the ACC, and it was against Notre Dame, who I wouldn't say is the very bottom of the conference, but obviously they're not even in the middle of the pack. I would rate Syracuse probably higher than Notre Dame. Hell, we saw Syracuse beat Notre Dame up in upstate New York a couple weeks ago. But Miami is a favorite to win this game. I get it, the game's in Florida, but personally, I don't understand why. If I had to make the odds for this one, I'd say Syracuse 3.5. Probably 3.5 favorites where I put it. And that's just how bad Miami's been. Don't let that Notre Dame win fool you. This team has been bad at home all season long. We've seen them lose time in and time out. SMU went into Miami, and I get it. SMU's not horrible this season. They're not as good as we thought they were, but Southern Methodist isn't bad. SMU goes into Miami and wins that game 117-74, right? They host Wake Forest. They lose the game by 10. They host FSU. The Seminoles beat them by 15 points. It's just not that good of a team. They host Virginia, who's been very bad this season. The Cavaliers go to Miami and beat them by 11 points. The Hurricanes coming off a loss on Saturday on the road at the KFC Yum Center against the Louisville Cardinals. Now, for Syracuse, they're not exceptionally great or nothing. I mean, obviously, they're a 5-8 team in the conference. They are coming off a victory against probably the other really bad team in the ACC, probably the second worst team in the ACC. We're looking at Boston College. It's a 95-86 triple overtime victory on Saturday. So maybe that's probably why Miami's favored to win this game, if I'm just being honest. It's just, again, Syracuse potentially playing on tired legs after that triple overtime game where they did come out on the right side of that one. This team, again, they're not the best scoring team, but J.J. Starling is back now, and he's been playing for majority of the season now. Starling is averaging 18 points a game. Once you go beyond him, again, Eddie Lampkin, if you remember him from the Colorado Buffaloes last season, kind of had, I wouldn't say a run like DJ Burns did in the NCAA tournament, but I was there in Indianapolis when Colorado won their first round game of the NCAA tournament. Lampkin obviously was their guy. He's now at Syracuse. I mean, Lampkin, again, he is a good rebounder. He's a physical guy down low. He's not all conference or anything, but Lampkin is a solid player and is a solid interior threat for Syracuse. Now we're going to talk about another interior threat in the Big Ten in a couple games here, which actually our next game, a guy who I've been raving about all season long, but we'll get to that in a minute. It's a great value play coming up here in the Big Ten. But regardless, JJ Starling's been playing pretty well. Eddie Lampkin, again, we can't really, rely on Lampkin to be an offensive presence, but on the glass, again, Lampkin's bringing in hell in the win over Boston College. I get it. BC misses a lot of shots, but Lampkin with 18 boards in that game. I mean, again, this is a guy who has potential to have 20 plus rebounds in a game, just depending on the team that they're playing. In the loss to Pitt, Lampkin with 23 boards in that basketball game. I mean, the guy, again, he is a rebound hunter and he is hard, again, to beat on the glass. I just think the overall team's better for Syracuse. And I'm not saying the Orange are a good basketball team. They're not, all right? But Miami isn't either. Both these teams are not very good. I just think the lesser of two evils here are the Syracuse Orange. And I really don't care they're going on the road. I don't care if this game was on Mars. Miami is just not that good of a team. We've seen it time in and time out this season. One win over Notre Dame doesn't prove to me anything. It just doesn't. I don't think Miami's that great. Eddie Lampkin, we're looking at JJ Starling again, who is their guard, who is able to score. I think Syracuse is the better basketball team. I just think they are. Their wins in the ACC this season are Boston College, Notre Dame, BC on the road, and Georgia Tech. But the other one I'm saving here is I think by far their best performance last week or 2 weeks ago. They go on the road to Berkeley and beat California. Now I know what you're thinking. Cal's not the best, but still going cross country to beat Cal in a game where, again, it's 10:30 your time when the game's starting. That's a big victory for Syracuse. They've shown capability of going on the road. Again, that's all I need to see. I know they lost to Stanford the game prior to that, but them going to California and winning that game and, again, proving me wrong in that spot, I'm all over Syracuse here. I do think they're able to go on the road and beat Miami. They are dogs here, and I love the value here. I like value in a lot of dogs today. This is one of a couple we're talking about. Give me the Syracuse Orange to go on the road to Miami, Florida, and beat this lowly Miami Hurricanes team. Again, it's bad basketball in the ACC. I completely understand, but still, we're going with Syracuse. Let's move on to our next game to the Big Ten Conference. We have the UCLA Bruins taking on the Illinois Fighting Illini. UCLA is an underdog in this spot, so we're jumping all over it. UCLA is about a plus 200 money line dog, and they are getting 5.5 points on the road. Yes, give me this. Illinois, coming off a road victory over the Minnesota Golden Gophers, a team that, when they're playing their best basketball, sure, they're not horrible, but a win on the road in Minneapolis doesn't really prove to me that much. We saw Illinois go to Rutgers to the Jersey Mike's Arena against Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper and lose that basketball game. Again, I get it. Those two guys on Rutgers obviously are going to be top 5 picks in the NBA draft. Those are elite talents. But the rest of that team is nowhere close to the level that Illinois should be on. Okay, the Fighting Illini, they're an 8-6 team in the Big Ten this season, and this game, honestly, it's not much on me picking against Illinois. I don't think they're great, because again, we've picked against the Fighting Illini quite a bit on the channel, if I'm being honest. This is more me picking UCLA here. A UCLA team who is now 9-5 in the Big Ten, 18-6 overall, and this is a team that looked like they were going to be dead in the water this season. They were at one point 2-4 in the Big Ten, coming off that loss at Rutgers. What do they do since? They haven't lost a game. This UCLA team has won now 7 in a row victories against Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington, USC, Oregon, Michigan State, and Penn State. And I've been saying it all season long with UCLA throughout this winning streak. This team's got so much talent. It's so much talent that, again, hadn't really been realized until this point of the season. Again, we've listed off these names for the UCLA Bruins, but there are really good basketball players in this team. Tyler Bilodeau, Eric Daly, Sebastian Mack, Kobe Johnson, Sky Clark, Dylan Andrews, Adai Mara, we'll talk about him in a minute, Lazar Stefanovic. I mean, that's going 10 guys deep on this lineup. They have really good players here at UCLA, and it's just a bunch of guys who kind of just hadn't figured it out yet until, again, they go on that 7-game winning streak, and UCLA is hot right now. They should be ranked. They're not, but UCLA keeps on climbing the rankings here, at least, or in bracketology sense. This UCLA team is going to be, I think, at least a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament this season, which this is a team that, again, looked like they were going to be completely out of it earlier in the season, and now look at them. Now, they do have somewhat of a tough schedule coming up. I mean, they get a spot on the road on Friday night against Indiana. I am praying that UCLA is getting plus money in that basketball game. Now, if they beat Illinois, they definitely won't be plus money, but I just hope that game is somewhat reasonable for us to bet on, and UCLA somehow isn't a 5.5 or 6.5 point favorite in Bloomington, because damn well UCLA is going to Indiana and beating the crap out of the Indiana Hoosiers. But you look at the rest of the schedule, right? Illinois, Indiana on the road, so 2 Urbana-Champaign, 2 Bloomington. They get Minnesota and Ohio State at home. They got to go to West Lafayette to take on Purdue. Don't love that spot. 2 Northwestern, winnable, very winnable, and then at home against USC. There's a very good chance this team finishes with only 5 losses in the Big Ten this season, potentially 6 if they do drop this Illinois game. And this is the decision I'm going to make up to you guys. You want to take the points here with UCLA, or you can take the money line. I'm fine with either. Again, I credit a lot of this resurgence of UCLA this season to Adai Mara. I know Mara doesn't always have the biggest presence in some of these games, but Mara is an absolute unit. Again, I didn't know why for so much of the season they didn't play their 7'4" center, who's a sophomore. Now Mara only played 10 minutes in the Penn State game, but Mara again through this winning streak was such a huge factor of this team. And I'm not saying again Adai Mara is the reason why they're winning and losing games, but again that presence that he was bringing in down low is huge. Now again, Mara isn't the only reason why UCLA is successful. Again, it's been the emergence of some of these other guards and scorers on this team. Again, we knew what Eric David was capable of, but Sky Clark, Dylan Andrews, Kobe Johnson, I mean, any of these guys can pop off for 15 plus in a single game. Again, it's just, there was so much untapped potential on this UCLA squad that all these guys and this entire unit is now finally realizing. And when we look at the Illinois Fighting Illini, right? They get Ivisic back a couple games ago. Obviously, he had mono, but he's now back in the lineup here for Illinois. It hasn't been Jacunius who's been their best player. It has been Will Riley recently, because Will Riley, again, has really taken over, primarily being the number 1 for this team. As Jacunius is good too. He scored 24 points in the Minnesota game, but Will Riley has been the guy for the Fighting Illini who's been leading them and scoring pretty much in every single night. Scored 27 in the win against Minnesota, scored 18 in the loss at Rutgers, and then 24 in the win over Ohio State. I just don't think Illinois is able to keep up with UCLA, which is kind of a crazy thing to say given the game is in Urbana-Champaign, but I really like what UCLA is doing right now. They are scoring effectively, and again, you don't know who's going to hurt you with UCLA. Again, this isn't a negative or a knock on Illinois, but it's just like, all right, you know what's coming out of the Fighting Illini. It's probably going to be Will Riley. It's probably going to be Kasparas Jacunius. It's probably going to be Ivisic. For UCLA, I mean, it could be Bilodeau, it could be Clark, it could be Johnson, it could be Mack, Daly, Andrews. There are so many guys who can just explode for big points, and I don't think they should be 5.5 point dogs in the spot. I think, again, they are a lot better than these odds indicate. I mean, hell, UCLA got so much respect last week when they were home favorites and big favorites against a top 10 team in the country in the Michigan State Spartans, and obviously, what do? They passed that test with flying colors. UCLA is great, man. I don't want to immediately stamp them to be a potential national championship threat, but I do think they're one of these teams that can definitely make a run this season. I am all in on UCLA. Give me the UCLA Bruins on the road to win and cover the points here against Illinois. Again, if you want to be aggressive, take the money line on UCLA. If not, just go plus 5.5 here for the Bruins. I don't mind it. Give me UCLA on the road to cover and win in Urbana-Champaign against the Illinois Fighting Illini. To our next game, we go back to the SEC here as we go to Austin, Texas for the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Texas Longhorns. Another one of these spots where you get interesting odds. Alabama only a 2.5 point favorite on the road against Texas. Alabama can make a case right now to being the 3rd best team in the country. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying they can make a case for it, though, right? This is a 9-1 team in the conference, with their only loss being a home loss to the Ole Miss Rebels, which is kind of confusing. Their other losses, I know Oregon's not aging great, but then at Purdue, who cares? The Oregon loss it's not ideal in a neutral site the way Oregon's been playing recently. I don't want to see Oregon in the NCAA tournament. They're going to be there. I actually hate that team. They're not fun to watch, and they're not great. But here's the thing. I don't know why Alabama is only a 2.5 point favorite against this Texas team. A Texas team that's lost 3 of 4 games. They lose the Ole Miss game. They go to Baton Rouge and beat Louisiana State. But I mean, my local high school team could probably beat Louisiana State right now. They lose to Arkansas at home, and they go to Vandy and lose that basketball game. Now a game where, again, Texas was winning for most of it. Vandy comes back, though, and that shooting out the Commodores is lethal. The Commodores end up winning that basketball game by 8 points. It was a game, again, Texas was competitive in, but what happened? They ended up losing. So Vandy again pulls away, and the Commodores win that game by 8 points. We only need Bama to win this one by 3. It is more than possible. And when we're talking about Texas Longhorns basketball, obviously you got to mention Trey Johnson. Johnson, their leading scorer with 19 points a night. Arthur Kaluma, Jordan Pope are also involved as well. Those guys are going to score 10 plus a night. But again, Texas, they do revolve around the play of Trey Johnson. Johnson is, their main scorer. He's the guy who's going to attack the rim. He's the guy who's going to get that offense going. But I do like Alabama more. I really do. Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, obviously the forward out of North Dakota. You get Aiden Holloway. You get fill in. I just think Alabama's the better built team. Again, we talk about the elite of the SEC. Obviously, Texas is nowhere near that. They're a 4-7 team in the conference this season. But the elite of the elite in the SEC right now, I think it's fairly simple. It's Auburn, it's Bama, it's Tennessee, it's Florida. Again, you can add, I guess. You could add A&M, but I just don't. A&M's got a decent record, but I don't think they stack up, just at least skillfully with Auburn, Bama, Florida, and Tennessee. Those by far feel like the 4 best teams in the conference. And obviously, again, we're going to figure things out as we go into the SEC tournament and beyond. But I really think, again, Bama, Florida, Tennessee, and Auburn are by far better than these squads. And again, personally, I'm surprised that Auburn lost to Florida the other day. But hell, we're going to see Auburn and Alabama go at it later this week, I believe, right? They're playing on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's a huge one. It's in Tuscaloosa. That's going to be a huge basketball game on Saturday night. But for now, again, we get Alabama and Texas. This is a warm-up spot. Warm-up spot's kind of a weird way of putting it, but they obviously can't look past Texas, but I don't think they are. They don't get to play Auburn until Saturday. They should be able to blow this team out. They're on the road. They're going to Austin. They're going to the Moody Center, but I think Alabama's fine. This team's only lost 1 game so far in the SEC this season, and that is a home spot to Ole Miss, but their last game, they find a way to win in Fayetteville against Arkansas. They win it by 4. If they beat Texas by 4, we're covering. They go to Mississippi State, win the game by 4. Again, that is a cover for Alabama. They have covered this line in every road game they have played this season. At Kentucky, they win the game by 5. At A&M, they win the game by 6. At South Carolina, obviously, they beat that team by 20 points. But every road game that Alabama's played all season long, they have covered this line. This team's only lost 1 road game. That's non-SEC play, obviously, against Purdue. They've been good. They're the all-around much better team. They have so many guys that can hurt you, but it all starts with Mark Sears and then Grant Nelson. I think they're the better team, especially against this Texas team, who I feel like is too dependent on Trey Johnson for a good reason. Johnson's a great player. But once you get beyond Trey Johnson, what the hell is Texas? And when you need to buy a bucket, obviously you go to him, but it's more than just a 1 possession game that we're talking about here. I mean, you're going to need to build possessions upon possessions to win this one against Bama. I don't think it happens. Give me the Alabama Crimson Tide to take care of business and cover the 2.5 points on the road here at Texas against the Longhorns. We move on to our final spot of the video. We talked about some big time basketball all day long, and this is still somewhat of a notable game. But we end tonight in San Jose, California for the San Jose State Spartans and the San Diego State Aztecs. Hear me out, I'm taking San Jose State plus 6.5. I know you guys might be sick of San Jose State, and they did not cover for us in the last game against Boise when they went on the road to Idaho and got blown out. That's my fault. I thought they were going to play better than they did, and I'll talk about some of just, the coaching of San Jose State. I don't know, there's a rotational move that I think was kind of screwed up, but we'll talk about that in a minute. If San Jose State doesn't cover the spot against San Diego State, we're going to lay off the Spartans for a while. I'm just going to be honest. It was the same thing that we kind of did early in the season with the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. We were on them a lot, and again, they started to, obviously falter for us, so we moved away from them entirely. But I'm still going to work with San Jose State here. I don't think San Jose State I don't think they should be a 6.5 point underdog at home against San Diego State. Now, if the game was in San Diego, I get these odds. I would think San Diego State's likely an 8.5, 9.5 point favorite if it's down in San Diego. But this team hasn't played exceptionally well on the road all year long, has San Diego State. Their only impressive road game that they've played in the Mountain West this season, well, there's 2 of them, but I mean, how well do you want to rate the Nevada win? Nevada's not bad, but hear me out. San Jose State, the way they're playing right now, kind of on the same level as Nevada. I know they went to Reno and lost by 11 points, but when they play Nevada this weekend in San Jose, I think San Jose State might straight up win that basketball game. You look at what San Diego State's done in the Mountain West this season on the road. They go to Boise, they win. That's the one impressive performance I'm talking about. They go to New Mexico, they go to the Pit. I mean, again, the Lobos are the best team by far in the conference, but they go to New Mexico, lose the game by 14 points. They go to Air Force, they go to Colorado Springs. They only beat that horrible Air Force team by 1 point. A team that San Jose State went on the road and beat by 7. Just saying. I know, again, college basketball and the numbers don't always work like that, but I'm just saying, right? San Diego State, though, coming off that loss in Colorado to the Colorado State Rams, not a good loss. Just, it isn't. And Colorado State's not bad. Colorado State's probably better than San Diego State. But, again, it's not a bad loss considering the situation. They're going right back on the road to San Jose State. That game was on Saturday. Now they got to go right back on the road to San Jose. I'm not saying going to San Jose State, to the Provident Credit Union Arena, whatever the hell it's called, is the most daunting task. It's not. Again, it is not. But again, losing to Colorado State is not a bad thing, but having to go straight off losing that game to Colorado State on the road to playing a team that's worse than Colorado State, it just feels like a trap. It does. And I think San Jose State might be able to catch them here. I'm not willing to go as far as saying, oh, San Jose State's going to beat them outright, like I was saying UCLA was going to beat Illinois on the road, but I don't mind it. We've seen San Jose State deliver in some of these spots this season, how they beat New Mexico earlier this season. It was the game-winning shot out of Latrell Davis against New Mexico earlier in the season. For this SJSU team, they've won 2 of 3, beating Air Force, beating Fresno. I get those teams are bad, and the loss to Boise State the other night. One thing I don't understand about that Boise State-San Jose State game, though, is why is your best scorer coming off the bench and not coming on the court until 8 minutes into the game? It doesn't make sense. We've been talking about, the San Jose State starting unit. We like Josh Uche. I think he's a really good scorer. I think Will McClendon can be good at times, Donovan Yap, and Robert Vaihola. But their best player recently has undoubtedly been Latrell Davis. And I don't know why Latrell Davis is coming off the bench. He scores 30-something points, knocks down 6 threes in the Fresno State game. I don't know who Latrell Davis pissed off, but he's coming off the bench when they're playing Boise. He still leads them in scoring. He goes 5 for 11 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, but still scores 14 points. He's the only San Jose State Spartan in that game to score double digits against Boise State. I don't know why Latrell Davis is coming off the bench. He's been starting games all year long, especially the second half of the year when they got into Mountain West play. Why is he coming off the bench now? It's kind of the same thing that happened with San Jose State's football team with Emmett Brown and Walker Gett. Emmett Brown was fine in the starting lineup. He was the starting quarterback all year long. In the first 5 games, the team's 4-1. They benched him in the middle of a game for Walker Gett, and Emmett Brown's never heard of ever again. Obviously, again, basketball doesn't work the same way because Latrell Davis is going to continue playing regardless, but it's like, I don't know what's going on with the coaching staff here at San Jose State, regardless of any sport. It doesn't make sense to me. Obviously, again, Emmett Brown's now at Coastal Carolina. Good on him. I hope he wins the starting job. If San Jose State, again, if they play the right guys, they should be fine. Maybe they're looking for a spark off the bench with Davis, I guess. But, you got to keep him and Uche in the lineup at all times. And especially when those two guys both played the entire game. They played 50 minutes against Fresno State the game before Boise. And again, Uche and Latrell Davis combined for like 60-something in that spot. So as long as they play their guys here, San Jose State is a tricky team to figure out because they can score. When Vaihola is good, he's on. He's not going to be your interior threat, but he's going to, this is one hell of a comp, he's going to kind of play like Nikola Jokic to a certain extent where he's going to move the ball around, he will finish, and he will drive and attack when he needs to. But as long as this team is playing their best guards in Uche and Davis for the entire game, I think San Jose State should be fine. So again, I think the big factor here, we know Josh Uche is going to show up, and we know Latrell Davis will as well. We just need Latrell Davis to play more than he did against Boise. It's ridiculous. So as long as Davis plays a good amount, 35 minutes, and same with Josh Uche, I'm okay with San Jose State here. We don't even need them to win. We just need them to cover 6.5 points at home here against the San Diego State Aztecs. The pick is San Jose State plus 6.5 at home. So folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure you like if you enjoy the video. We'll be back in a couple hours for our NBA predictions. That's going to be at the normal setup, because I'm not doing this again. I'll be home in time to be on the regular setup. So folks, thank you all for watching, and Mamba forever.